Greetings, this is Reverend Yue McCormick of True Vow Temple. In this presentation, the fourth of 10 parts, I will be talking about the Hoben or Skillful Means chapter, whose initial prose passage is recited in the morning and evening devotional practice and other services of Nichiren Buddhism. The next part of the Skillful Means chapter of the Lotus Sutra that we recite as part of most Nichiren Shu services is the following. Shari hotsu goju jo butchirai shuju inen shuju hiyu koen gonkyo mushu hoben nindo shujo ryori sho jaku. Which means, Shariputra, since I attained Buddhahood, using various causes and conditions, and various parables, I have given many discourses and teachings, using innumerable skillful means, to guide sentient beings to enable them to be free from all attachments. The historical Shakyamuni Buddha taught for some 50 years. As he says in the passage we are looking at today, he used many different methods to convey the Dharma to others. He taught principles such as the Four Noble Truths and the Eightfold Path. He used many parables, such as the famous parable of the raft or the parable of the poisoned arrow. He also told stories about the past lives of himself and others to illustrate the workings of cause and effect. Shakyamuni Buddha knew how best to touch the hearts and minds of those he met, so that he could help them free themselves of the attachments that kept them bound to the cycle of suffering. When reading or hearing one of the discourses of the Buddha as recorded in the sutras, we should not get caught up in the surface meaning or cling to concepts or worry about whether the Buddha is asserting that something actually did or did not happen. The Buddha used these methods not to assert religious dogmas, metaphysical speculations, or philosophical views. Rather, when he spoke, his purpose was to help people look deeply into the nature of their own lives so they could let go of greed, hatred, and delusion, and find the same freedom that he had found. Now let's look at some key terms used in this passage. Jobutsu means to attain Buddhahood. Jo can also mean to achieve, to accomplish, to become or turn into, to reach, or to fully develop. From the perspective of the Lotus Sutra, enabling all beings to attain Buddhahood is the true intention or purpose of all the Buddha's teachings. What is Buddhahood? Buddhahood means the state of being awake to the true reality of all things. It is to directly know for oneself the caused and conditioned, and therefore empty, nature of all phenomena. It is to directly know all things as expressions of the middle way that transcends being and non-being. It is to directly know the interdependence of all beings, all things. It is the awakening of selfless compassion. In one sense, the title Buddha is strictly applied only to the one person in historical memory who first awakened to the Dharma and went on to teach it to others. In a wider sense, Buddhahood is one of the 10 realms that the lives of all beings are comprised of. Buddhahood is part of our nature, and by following the teachings of the Buddha, we discover that nature and live in accord with it in our daily lives. The characters pronounced inen can mean various things depending on context. In can mean cause, and en can mean conditions. Inen can be a translation of hetu pratyaya, a Sanskrit term that can be translated into English as causal condition or causality. It refers to the causes and secondary or supporting causes called conditions that bring about the arising of phenomena. Inen is also a translation of the term pratitya samutpada, which in English means dependent origination. Inen can also be a translation for nidana, which in English means a framing story, which is a story that explains why a sutra was expounded or why a precept was given by the Buddha. To understand that all things arise and cease in accordance with changing causes and conditions is or perhaps the key insight of Shakyamuni Buddha. We can go further and say that things don't just arise and cease in accordance with causes and conditions. They are nothing other than causes and conditions, which is why they are empty of any independent self-nature. Hiyu translates the Sanskrit term avadana, which means a parable, tale, or narrative. Often, these tales may refer to stories about the past life of a follower of the Buddha and the fruition of their past meritorious actions. In the Lotus Sutra, of course, we have the famous parables of the burning house, the parable of the excellent physician and his children, and so on. Shujo means sentient being, and is a term that occurs frequently throughout the sutras and teachings, so it is good to be familiar with it. Jaku means attachment and translates the Sanskrit term raga that can also be translated as desire, greed, lust, or passion. In the trace gate of the Lotus Sutra, beginning with Chapter 2, Skillful Means, the Hoben that we recite, the Buddha teaches that all his other teachings are part of the one vehicle. Those who embark upon the one vehicle are thereby able to attain Buddhahood. The teachings about the one vehicle in the trace gate are given in what has been called the 3 cycles of expounding the Dharma. These refer to 3 ways used by Shakyamuni Buddha in the Lotus Sutra to expound the one vehicle to the 3 groups of voice hearers. The first was to directly expound the Dharma to the disciples of superior capacity. This means practitioners of sharp intelligence who have all but overcome defilements and have high aspirations. This occurs in the rest of Chapter 2, wherein Shakyamuni Buddha tells Shariputra that there is only one vehicle. Shariputra then receives the assurance that he will attain Buddhahood in Chapter 3, a parable. The second was to expound parables for the disciples of average capacity. This means practitioners of average intelligence, average ability to overcome defilements, and average aspirations. This occurs in Chapter 3, a parable, wherein Shakyamuni Buddha relates the parable of the 3 carts in the burning house to those disciples who did not yet fully understand, as Shariputra had, that all his disciples would be able to attain Buddhahood by means of the one vehicle. In subsequent chapters, more parables about the one vehicle are given by both the Buddha and his disciples. In Chapter 6, Assurance of Future Buddhahood, Subhuti, Mahakatyayana, Mahakashyapa, and Mahamadgalyayana are then given assurances that they will attain Buddhahood. The third was to expound on the past life causes and conditions for the disciples of dull capacity. This occurs in Chapter 7, the parable of a magic city, wherein the Buddha tells the story of how he had begun teaching the Lotus Sutra in a distant age, when he was one of 16 princes who were the sons of a past Buddha named Great Universal Wisdom Excellence Buddha. Those who heard him at that time have again become his disciples, now that he has attained Buddhahood, and are finally ready to receive their own assurances of Buddhahood. In subsequent chapters, Purna, Aniruddha, Ananda, Rahula, Mahaprajapati, Yashodhara, and many others receive the assurance that they will attain Buddhahood. The Buddha even predicts that his treacherous cousin Devadatta will someday attain Buddhahood. So here in this passage we have reference to discourses, the direct expounding of the Dharma, to parables, and to past life causes and conditions. In a sense, this passage is giving us a preview of what to expect in the following chapters. In our own practice, we should cultivate our ability to listen and deeply understand the teachings we receive, whether given as abstract principles, parables and allegories, or as stories about the unfolding of causes and conditions in the world. Even the stories and parables from other traditions, if they can move our hearts and minds to a life of selfless compassion, can be the skillful means of the Buddha at work in the world, continually expounding the Dharma. Every event in our own lives, in the lives of our family, friends, co-workers, and all those around us, or even events in the news, if taken in with discernment and empathy, can be a lesson in causes and conditions that can awaken us to the true reality of all things. As the Buddha says at the end of the verses of Chapter 16, I am always thinking, how can I cause sentient beings to enter into the unsurpassed way and quickly become Buddhas? This means that the eternal Buddha is always teaching in some manner. The 3 cycles of expounding the Dharma, expounding through parables, and expounding causes and conditions are ongoing. As part of our practice, we should cultivate attentiveness to this ongoing teaching of the Buddha, and learn how to be effective teachers ourselves, so that we can awaken to what has been shared with us and pass it on to others. As the Buddha also said to those who had become liberated by hearing, understanding, and practicing the Dharma, "Go now and wander for the welfare and happiness of many, out of compassion for the world, for the benefit, welfare, and happiness of gods and humans. Teach the Dharma that is good in the beginning, good in the middle, and good in the end, with the meaning and the letter." I now bring this fourth of a 10-part presentation on the Skillful Means chapter of the Lotus Sutra to a close. I look forward to your questions and comments. May the merits of this talk on the Dharma extend universally to all, so that we and all living beings together accomplish the Buddha way.